Good morning, Dr. Badia here for our weekly or bi-weekly now episode of podcast Fixing Healthcare from the Trenches. It is a great pleasure to tell you a little bit about our guest this week because he is really the epitome of a clinician slash entrepreneur, something I've continued to strive for. But Dr. Joseph McGinley has done it very successfully. He's as a clinician, he's actually not an orthopedic surgeon. Many people think that he is a musculoskeletal radiologist. So a lot of what he does is treatment via injection, finding the source of the pain. But his start was actually mechanical engineering, which was a good launch pad for things he's done, which he'll talk about. He did his undergraduate work at Temple. He has a PhD in physiology. He and I never spoke about that, but that was my undergraduate major at Cornell. So I love physiology. And then he did his residency at and fellowship at kind of a lackluster place called Stanford. And he and then started. He actually moved from Philadelphia while he was in California, obviously, and then settled. It's an interesting story, but settled in Casper, Wyoming. And he started. He is the founder, CEO of something called a company called McGinley Orthopedics, which has several different branches, several products that I've used, and I'm proud to say I'm actually an investor because I saw this at the Academy of Orthopedic Surgeons, and I thought that this particularly this one product, which we'll talk about, is really the cat's meow. So without further ado, introducing Dr. Joseph McGinley.
Alejandro, great. Nice to see you today.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us. And I'm glad you're joining us before also a little known fact about you that you will be climbing Mount Everest in about 10 days, right?
I leave on Sunday. So yeah, I'm all packed, ready to go. By this time next week, hopefully we'll be heading up to base camp.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, make sure you have a cocktail at the Yak and Yeti in Kathmandu. That's one of my favorite bars in the world. I was not there to climb Everest, but so I admire that. Well, at some point, I think you're going to get through the 7 summits, right? Is that the goal?
That's correct. This, if successful, this will be number 6 of the 7 summits. And then the last one I have is Mount Vincent in Antarctica. So that, if all goes well, that'll be next year. And if we're talking this time next year, hopefully all 7 will be complete.
All right. Well, good. Well, a lot of people are depending on you. So be safe. I look forward to hearing the story. So tell us a little bit about how, as a clinician, you really got into being an entrepreneur and solving a problem and what the challenges are, really, because that's what the podcast is about, is educating the public and our colleagues about our challenges.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're an entrepreneur yourself, and you're aware of the passion and desire to change healthcare. Really, it's just something wonderful that when you experience it, there's no better professional feeling. And when I was finishing up med school, I had the opportunity to go on to residency fellowship at Stanford, and then we ended up starting McGinley Orthopedics. And I was still practicing at the time, so I got to see both sides of healthcare, both sides of medicine. And to be honest, it was rather shocking and frustrating to see, how the mechanics occur within medicine. And most patients would be shocked to know what happens in the background and how decisions are made, or even how decisions are made outside their physicians from third parties that have never even met them before. So it is an interesting process. It's a great learning process. Again, for me as a clinician and an entrepreneur, I learned from both sides of the aisle on that, and you have to navigate that carefully to make sure you're successful.
And you brought up a point about that patients would be indeed shocked. What do you think that we can do? Because it's one of the questions I ask a lot of the guests is, what can we do to educate the public? Because, this podcast and many others, doesn't get, we're no Joe Rogan, right? But this affects not only people's lives, right? Especially some of the products you've developed in McGinley Orthopedics, but it affects our economy. It's 20% of our economy. We talk about inflation. We talk about impending recession. Why do you think the public doesn't seem to care about this?
Well, again, when you have insurance, right, you just assume it's covered by insurance and you don't really care. You don't shop around. You think all healthcare is the same. You think if you go to see one doctor versus the other, you're getting the exact same care, that they're always going to be using the best products. But that's just not the case. And it's challenging, right? So if there's no, direct impact on the patient that they can see up front, it's hard to change that behavior. So the system itself has created this culture where, patients just don't ask the questions. And those that do ask questions, those that say, okay, what is the pricing at this facility versus that facility? Why are they using specific products or procedures? Those individuals end up getting, I think, better care once they start asking the questions. But empowering the patient really is the solution. But the system is biased against that currently.
Yeah. So basically, patients maybe should have some skin in the game, right? And that they would make wiser decisions.
Yeah, well, a good example of this, we chatted offline about this recently with our IntelliSense Drill and products. We just recently entered the veterinary market, and it's shockingly more efficient, because everything's cash pay in that situation. And people who are bringing in their dogs and pets, they love them as their child. So they want the best care. So when we're introducing our products to veterinary orthopedic surgeons, they jump on it right away. I mean, the turnaround time is weeks instead of years, which is what we see in current, human medicine. So it's been eye-opening to see the efficiency and in my opinion, the focus on better outcomes and better care in veterinary medicine than in human medicine.
That is sad. And there were two great veterinary schools at Penn, right near Temple, and at Cornell. So I've also seen that side. And I have a number of people lately have been talking to me about their dogs and about, ACL and it's amazing, like what the reimbursement is there compared to the human ACL. And it is shocking.
Yep.
Let's talk about your drill, because it has been a game changer for me. Now, I don't do anything in a hospital anymore. People know that about me. I'm very proud of that. So I'll do a humerus plating or a clavicle, which before I used to be quite stressed about it, right? There's a little something called the subclavian vein and artery, right? And you talk about the case report. There's actually been 2 deaths, I think, in Australia from plating of the clavicle. And what the IntelliSense drill does, right, is it's safe and it saves time and money in the operating room. And yet I can't even get my colleagues here at a major trauma center in Miami to even look at it. So that goes to show, I mean, if it was veterinary, you're right, that would be no problem. So to talk a little bit about the drill and about the benefits.
Yeah, there's a lot to unwrap in that last statement there, Alejandro. But the IntelliSense drill, we looked at this, my background's engineering, right? So we saw a major problem in orthopedic surgery, and that's the manual process of fracture fixation. Right now, all the tools that are currently being used, the drills, the depth measurement, all of it's completely manual. It really hasn't changed since, like the 1970s, really. So we took the concept, just like we have our smartphones that have sensor technology, enabling technology to make our lives easier. We said, what if we take the same concept, put sensors into the tools the surgeons are using, and then create a handheld robotic system? And that's what the IntelliSense drill does. So we embedded sensors into the standard orthopedic drill. It can sense bone as it's drilling, so it knows where it's at the entire time throughout the drilling process. Automatically stops when you breach the far side of the bone, and then tells you exactly what size screw you need. So because of that, it's safer, faster, it's better for the patient. And you're absolutely right. Trying to get adoption is challenging for various reasons, whether, the hospitals don't want to bring it in. They just see it as a drill. They don't really appreciate the enabling technology, the safety technology. Some surgeons think they don't need it. We have several publications now that prove otherwise, but a lot of surgeons will say, well, I don't plunge, I get my screws correctly every single time. We know that's not true just on published data. So, trying to change behavior can be challenging. And this type of technology, patients can ask for it.
Let's explain to those patients what plunging is, right? So when we put a plate and screws on generally a fracture, we may use it for other things, but most commonly a fracture, right, where the bone is broken, right? A fracture and broken bone are the same thing, by the way, right? So when we put that plate on, right, we drill, and then we measure the screw length, and many times it's inaccurate because when you measure, sometimes you catch a little tissue on the far side, and many of the screws end up being long, and patients complain of long screws. So that's one issue. But the issue of plunging, as I alluded to in the clavicle, is that it can be dangerous, or around the pelvis, right? You can penetrate in Oregon, and it doesn't take very far. So for the public to understand that it's safe. Now, today I'm doing a case, by the way. That's why I wear a sport jacket, but I'm going to be in the operating room in the next hour or two. And I have to do a few cases. One of them is a shortening osteotomy, right, of the ulna, right? So what I want now the clinicians to understand is this saves money, because I will not measure a single screw. I'll put the drill. It'll stop at the far cortex. Now, it's not a very dangerous area there, fortunately, but I won't plunge, and I'll be able to measure. So immediately, the whole team in the operating room will know what size screw I need, and I'll put those 6 or 7 screws in, and I'll save at least, a good 5 to 10 minutes or more if I get the wrong screw length. And then I have that screw I have to take out, and now I can't put that in somebody else. So that screw, which is typically what about, can be anywhere from $40 to $150 for titanium screw. So this has an economic consequence as well, time saving and certainly safety.
Yeah, the average screw price is about $125 per screw. You're absolutely correct.
Don't tell me that, because I'm a part owner. So Joe, and also, by the way, I use the plate because it's a very novel. I was very involved in the transformation of how distal radius fractures are treated. And you guys took it to the next level with the lever action plate. So this is a plate for my colleagues who, when you put the plate in, I can actually dial in the amount of tilt of that joint surface. And that has been a game changer as well. And we're hoping to publish that. So thank you for that. So we alluded to a number of things that end up really impacting our healthcare system. You've seen big university. You're now in private practice. I want to hear what your 3 top initiatives would be to fix our healthcare system.
Well, the number one bane of we could probably go 30 on that list and still be talking. But picking a top 3 can be challenging. The number one thing on a day-to-day basis, believe it or not, are insurance companies. And you're aware of the frustration of insurance companies and how they can dictate care. So I think extracting insurance companies, getting them out of the decision-making process on how we care for patients, that's number one. As physicians, we want to make sure we're doing what's best for our patients, and we don't want other third parties who haven't seen those patients influencing that. Empowering physicians to make decisions and manage the care of the practice. Traditionally, even as recent as 20, 30 years ago, a majority of practices were physician-owned and physician-run. We're seeing that switch. I think we're below 50% now, and most physicians are employed by hospitals. So their decision-making ability, their ability to control patient care, has diminished significantly in that time period. So we're on the front line. We're the ones that are seeing the patients. We know what's best for the patient. So I think empowering physicians again to be in control of management.
Now we have private equity getting very involved, which can be good or bad. That's a whole. One of my colleagues on the Ortho show, shout out to Scott Sigmund, had a very interesting guest recently about private equity. So that's another discussion. But absolutely.
I think the jury's still out on private equity, right? We don't know if they're going to be helpful or not in this situation, but hopefully they're on the helpful side of things.
So and then number 3?
And then, I think number 3 would be when we're caring for patients, focusing on prevention and educating patients, empowering patients to be decision makers. If patients were empowered and really focusing on what's best for them, I don't think we'd be in this situation, because they are the consumers. They're consumers of healthcare, and they have more power than they really believe. And unfortunately, the system's biased against that. But it doesn't take many patients to speak up to change how things are done.
No, we've seen it with several societal issues, right? I always say this, a few bad cops all of a sudden change the dialogue in this country. So I'm wondering, what is it a few bad decisions that an insurance company makes that really affects patients? And you contributed, in my book, and there's a patient there mentioned. So we are going to be having a patient on this podcast very soon who's going to tell their story, because I think what you just said is critical.
The patient stories are powerful, and on our website, we have Jan Campbell who's told her story about screws being too long and how that's affected her. I mean, I couldn't, there's no way I could tell that story the way she did. And from her perspective, you can just feel that emotion. You can feel how that impacted her life. So it doesn't take too many of those for, politicians, industry, everyone else to look at it and say, we need to fix this. We can do better, really. That's where we should be.
Absolutely. So, all right. Well, I'm going to give you my three, Joe. And there's always an overlap, with people who are disrupting healthcare. I find that my top three initiatives are very similar. So similar to physicians not insurance companies not dictating care, oversight, not authorization, right? Yes. Meaning the authorization process is a hurdle. Rather, we should have oversight because physicians, like anybody else, can make bad decisions, and there are overutilizers. We all know this as doctors, but it's not the majority of people. So we need that oversight, but not the hurdles of authorization. And now, finally, I think Congress is really working on that. The second one is something that you're bringing now to your part of Wyoming, right specialist at the right time. Yep. This concept of gatekeeper, and there's too much to know in medicine. You really need to see, in many cases, the right, not specialist, but subspecialist, because that actually saves money. We order less studies, less tests. You're a radiologist. You see people ordering, right, MRIs of fingers. I mean, it's an absurd thing, right? So let the right specialist. And you are, I'd like to announce that you are going to be opening your own Ortho Now, in June, right?
That's correct. Yeah, June 5th or 6th, that first full week of June. We're going to be opening up the first Ortho Now right here in Casper, Wyoming, and looking forward to providing, as you said, specialized care to patients to make sure that they're treated more effectively, efficiently, and save them money, really, in the end.
Yeah, save them and the insurance company money. So hopefully we can get the insurance company, supporting this. And then the last one is what we're doing, and what you've always done as well, Joe, is educating the public. And that is, that was always the goal. That's why in 10 weeks, I during lockdown, I didn't do a lot of Netflix binging, but what I did is I wrote this book that's right behind my left shoulder. And that book and this podcast, the goal is to really bring people like you and voices to this. And people can watch this recording on YouTube, by the way. This is podcast 13. While you're in the gym or driving, you can also see the podcast on Spotify, Apple, iHeartMedia, I believe, and all of those. So what are your parting words, Dr. McGinley?
Well, again, for your audience out there, for the physicians, keep fighting. There's those of us that really do want to change healthcare and make it better for patients. And there's a lot of us out there. For the patients out there, just speak up, ask questions, and demand the best care for yourself. That's really all we can ask, and tell others to do the same. I mean, the more voices involved, the better it's going to be for everyone.
I agree. And I think there is a groundswell happening now in terms of healthcare. And, I'm having some interesting conversations with some legislators, but it's got to come from the public. So yes. If all of you who are watching found what Dr. McGinley said interesting, please share it, because, we all like likes, but that doesn't move the needle. What you've got to do is share it and talk about it and, critique it. Let me know what problems you have with everything you said, what I said, because that's the only way if we get a dialogue. So thank you, Dr. McGinley, and I'll see everyone in 2 weeks. I'll be doing the podcast, I think, from Europe, so that'll be a new, unique experience.
Thank you, Alejandro.
And good luck on Everest, all right?
Yes, thank you. We'll catch up afterwards.
All right, bye-bye.
Thank you.